Carlton Bub Carrington, the 6'4", 190-pound guard from Pittsburgh. He'll be almost 19 by the time the draft takes place. And after spending just his freshman year at college, I do expect him to be drafted in the first round. He averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He shot 41% from the field, 32% from 3, and 78% from the free throw line. Now, Bub Carrington got off to a hot start to his college career by recording a triple-double in his very first game, which immediately put him on the radar for a lot of people because he was a highly rated recruit, but he wasn't like a top 20 guy. And so that immediately, gathered some attention. He's really good. The strengths of Carrington, right? He's really good at navigating the pick and roll, and especially getting into the mid-range and either making plays for his teammates or getting off a shot off the dribble. He really is a rhythm player. He likes to play with the ball in his hands, dribble really over 4 or 5 times, and then that's what enables him to get into like a fluid motion and get his shot off. He's not quite as good off the catch, and we'll get into that later. And he's a tough shot maker, like a really tough shot maker, and well beyond his years, I would say, in that aspect alone. He has an innate ability to create space and find different places around the court, whether that's from mid-range or from the three-point line, to create shots off the dribble. And going back to the pick and roll, he's really good at like snaking the pick and roll and utilizing the space that creates to get off a mid-range jumper. Additionally, I would say that he does compete defensively, at least in key matchups, I would say. And then lastly, in terms of strengths, he's a really good rebounding guard. 5 rebounds a game is a really solid number for a guy who's about 6'4", 6'5", depending on where you see him at. And, he had a triple-double in his first game. He had several games of more than 5 rebounds, so he's a really good rebounder for a guard. On the flip side, some negatives for Carrington. His shot selection is not very good. And quite frankly, some of that is obviously because he feels like, and rightfully so, he could make pretty much any shot on a basketball court. And he's shown the ability to do so. But the reason why he shot 41% from the field and 32% from 3, despite being a good shooter, and that's evident by almost being 80% from the free throw line, is his shot selection wasn't great. He needs to pick and choose his spots a little bit better as to when he's going to take the shots off the dribble and when he can kind of get them more in the flow of the offense. His defensive impact is pretty limited, I would say. Although he does compete at times, he's not a guy who will generate steals and blocks. He doesn't do a great job of a second effort. The first effort's there, but the second effort seems to be lacking on the defensive side of the ball. Additionally, I would say he can be a little bit out of control at times and not necessarily within himself, and you could see that especially, I would say, in the ACC tournament game. Even though he had a great game, there was a couple moments where it seemed like he was getting a little bit tired. He played pretty much the whole game, if not the whole game, so understandably so again, but he was called for an offensive foul where there was a couple of moments he could have been called for it earlier, and he just seemed a little frustrated, a little bit tired. And then lastly, he's got to get stronger, and that'll help him both defensively and then offensively, where he's not great finishing around the rim. And I think that's something that will improve because I've seen flashes of him being able to score around the rim. And just with his ability to score off the dribble, it makes sense to me, and his size, that if he gets stronger, that's going to be an area that will improve. So I'm not as concerned about that aspect of his game. I think he's going to be drafted somewhere between 11 and 23. And would I draft Carrington? I was initially going to say no. And then as I watched more of his game, I upgraded that to a maybe. And the reason why I say maybe is not only is he a great shot creator, but he also makes plays for his teammates. He's a really good rebounder. And I think the defense is not terrible. And like, so the comps that come to mind for a guy like Carrington initially are like a Lou Williams, a Jamal Crawford, even like a J.R. Smith to an extent. And I think other than the first two guys, I think Carrington can be a better defender and a better rebounder than those two guys, while having the shot making and the creation that the first two had. And I think he can eventually develop into being a defender that J.R. Smith was at the back half of his career. But that's the question for me, is can Carrington develop the skills he needs to get on the court quicker, while some of his shot creation and playmaking skills are good, but they need to be refined. And so the question for me is, which teams are going to allow him the time to develop and just become a more mature basketball player? And so for me, it became a little bit difficult to determine where he would be drafted. I think he goes somewhere between like the end of the lottery, so 15 to let's say 23. I don't think the Knicks would take him. And I think teams like Toronto and Washington would be good fits. Also Chicago, Philly, and Charlotte potentially. The issues with Charlotte and Chicago are their draft locations. So I don't think Charlotte would take him in the top 10. They'd have to trade up for him somewhere in the 20s, which I could see. I think he could be a good fit on that team. Philly could just use somebody behind Maxey. In Chicago, I have no idea what they're going to do this offseason with DeRozan a free agent and Zach LaVine trade rumors, and who knows what Lonzo Ball's going to be like. So those are some teams I could see him landing on. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.